Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. On February 24th, President Trump will deliver his State of the Union address to Congress. At AM 560 The Answer is throwing a viewing party. Tickets are on sale now at 560theanswer.com/party.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here, and J.D. Vance was there in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life, where he spoke in no uncertain terms about the sanctity of life and the left's ghoulish obsession with death, both after conception as well as end of life, and we'll cover both topics. But first, let's start with unborn life and J.D. Vance.
From the skeletons in brothels to the child sacrifice of the Mayans, the mark of barbarism is that we treat babies like inconveniences to be discarded rather than the blessings to cherish that they are. But the inheritance of our civilization is something else. The fact that, as Scripture tells us, each life is fearfully and wonderfully made by our Creator. The March for Life, my friends, it's not just about a political issue as important as all this politics stuff is. It is about whether we will remain a civilization under God, or whether we ultimately return to the paganism that dominated the past. Today, the far left in this country tells our young people that marriage and children are obstacles, that it's irresponsible, even immoral because of climate change or some other reason, to encourage our young people to raise a family. They tell us that life itself is a burden. But we here at this march, we know that it's a lie. We know that life is a gift. We know that babies are precious because we know them and we love them and we see the way that they can transform our families. We know that family is not just the source of a great joy, but it's part of God's design for men and women, a design that extends outward from the family to our neighborhoods, to our communities, and to the United States of America itself. And we here know, that treating everyone with dignity isn't always easy. It's not always convenient, but it's the right thing to do. We know that the people telling our young men and women that discarding family and children is a form of liberation, we know that those people are telling a lie. And so, to our fellow Americans, we march in part to serve as a witness. To our fellow Americans, we say, you're never going to find great meaning in a cubicle or in front of a computer screen, but you will find great meaning if you dedicate yourself to the creation and sustenance of human life.
Katie Glendaniel is the Director of Legal Affairs for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. She joins us now. Katie, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
It was a wonderful speech that J.D. Vance gave, but then there are the details of what's actually happening at the federal level, including a disturbing report a few weeks ago that HHS had resumed payments to Planned Parenthood, and a suggestion from President Trump that Republicans need to be, quote, a little flexible, unquote, on the Hyde Amendment. So where do those matters stand?
Well, it seems that the Hyde Amendment, which is the federal law that prevents all of us from having to pay for abortions with our tax dollars, at least at the federal level, is protected for now. The reporting that we're seeing is that these senators who are trying to come up with a deal could not get it done, so Hyde is protected, which is great news, but this is hardly something we should have to fight for when the vast majority of Americans, including independents, don't want to pay for abortion.
Right, and so I mean, you know, and this is the issue, isn't it? I mean, this is why the March for Life goes on and needs to, post Dobbs is number one. Obviously, we're still battling at the state level, state by state. And number two, oh, by the way, the other side doesn't stop. So, I mean, these policy debates rage on, and there are some on the Republican side that are weak-kneed on this issue, as they are on many issues.
Unfortunately, that's true. And, we saw 17 House Republicans vote with all the Democrats for a health care plan that would not include the Hyde Amendment. I think people forget Obamacare was the single largest expansion of taxpayer-funded abortion because it did not have that Hyde Amendment on it. So we've got to keep having this fight, because if we don't hold the line, we will all be pulled into paying for killing of unborn children.
And what about the issue of whether or not Planned Parenthood is still receiving federal funds after there was much high-fiving about ending federal financing of Planned Parenthood?
Well, Congress and the president got a huge victory last summer when they defunded big abortion businesses. Of course, the biggest is Planned Parenthood, from Medicaid. However, you're right. There are these other pots of money, the Title X program, some other programs, and Planned Parenthood is just so good at getting their hands on our money.
Mm-hmm.
So we are hopeful that the backlash that the administration is seeing shows them that they've got to reinstate what's called the Protect Life rule. That's the rule that prevented Planned Parenthood from accessing $60 million in federal money under the first Trump administration. That rule's got to come back.
I wanted to get your take on the end of life, too. I mean, just as I mentioned at the outset, we have a right to die euthanasia law that was just signed into law by J.B. Pritzker. And, these moves are afoot in a lot of states, particularly states governed by the pro-abort left, pro-death left, I think it's fair to call them, based on their behavior. This story out of Canada is really telling. I mean, we try to tell these stories where this quote-unquote death to dignity made medical assistance in dying has existed for a while, and this slippery slope that inevitably comes, and it's come in Canada, it's come in Western Europe, it's come in Pacific Northwest states that have had government-sponsored killing for a while. This story, though, elderly woman euthanized within hours of her husband, claiming she changed her mind after she insisted she wanted to live. A woman in her 80s, referred to as Mrs. B, had complications after coronary artery bypass graft surgery. She went into severe decline and opted for palliative care. She was sent home from the hospital with palliative support and her husband caring for her. But as her condition got worse, her elderly husband struggled to care for her, even with the help of visits by nurses. This is from a review. Mrs. B reportedly expressed her desire for MAID, medical assistance in dying, to her family. In response, and on the same day, her spouse contacted a referral service on her behalf. However, she told the assessor she, quote, wanted to withdraw her request, citing personal and religious values and beliefs, and instead wanted inpatient hospice care. Her husband took her to the hospital the next morning, where doctors found she was stable, but her husband was, quote, experiencing caregiver burnout, unquote. So her husband asked for a urgent second MAID assessment later that day. A different assessor showed up, judged her to be eligible. The original one objected. Didn't matter. She was put down. And I say that like an animal because that's what these programs do, as far as I'm concerned. So just talking about, this has very sentimental appeal in certain circumstances with certain people, just like abortion does. Don't bring a child into this nasty old world, and so on and so forth. And these are the sorts of appeals that are made at the end of life, too. It's the same sentimental barbarism.
That's right. When we decide, and especially now we're bringing the healthcare profession into this, we're making it a medical thing, right? In a way that we would never describe it if somebody overdosed at home. We would say that was medical. But you bring a doctor in, and somehow that excuses the fact that we've dehumanized life at the beginning of life and at the end of life. And we should be learning from Canada and not repeating their mistakes. It seems that J.B. Pritzker took the exact wrong lesson away from Canada and is deciding to push through the same dehumanizing policies in Illinois.
When you look ahead to this election year, where are the battlefronts with respect to the pro-life movement?
Well, of course, there are some major Senate battles, and holding the Senate is key to victories like defunding the abortion industry. For our organization, SBA Pro-Life America, we're going to be very focused in some of your neighbor states, Michigan and Iowa, so that we can hold and expand the Senate map. But there are also states that are going to be facing abortion on the ballot. And we hope that their voters learn that when voters were told in Michigan and Arizona and some of these other states that this is not a big deal, it's just like before Roe, the reality is these pro-aborts then go in, they file lawsuits, they challenge every single law. In Michigan, they've been trying to force taxpayer funding in at the state level for years, and they see that what these pro-abortion activists are selling them is not what they're ultimately going to get. Missourians have learned this lesson quickly, and they'll actually have an initiative in November that will undo the initiative from 2024.
Yeah, actually, I was going to raise the Missouri example. That seems to me, and somewhat surprisingly and indefensibly, sort of the pro-life movement writ large in Missouri and elsewhere was sort of caught flat-footed when they shouldn't have been. You know they're going to find an angle in, and as soon as that ballot initiative started to move, that should have sent a clarion call to make sure that we weren't outgunned like we normally are. But nonetheless, in a red state like Missouri, you had that terrible pro-abort amendment pass.
Well, and the state of Missouri is in court right now. You've got this group that filed a lawsuit saying we want to sell abortion pills to kids through phone apps in Missouri. The state's challenging that. You've got Planned Parenthood, who's filed a huge lawsuit saying we shouldn't have to report complications, we shouldn't have to give women accurate information about their medical history, about their baby, and all these different regulations that they want to opt out of, and they say they have a constitutional right. Like, imagine that. The constitutional right of the abortion industry to not follow any law. That is what Planned Parenthood's arguing for in Missouri. And we think voters are going to see that what they bought in 2024 is not what they thought they were getting, and they'll reverse the error.
But you still think that the pro-abort industry, led by Planned Parenthood, is going to initiate these ballot questions for the purposes of trying to drive turnout and make that a litmus test issue. Get those suburban women that they have come to rely on to win close races, particularly in states that are toss-ups or even lean red.
Yeah, what they found is there are some very effective lies that even people who will say, I'm pro-life, I go to church every week, but I would hate for a hospital to turn a woman away, even though no state law requires that and no constitutional amendment that's permissively pro-abortion would fix that. That lie was extremely effective in a state like Ohio. So they found if they can get this issue on the ballot, they can tell these lies, they can create these constitutional amendments that are extremely favorable to the abortion industry and hurt women and are absolutely lethal for babies. And then if voters have buyer's remorse, they're going to have to wait years to fix it.
Yeah, this is where it seems to me that, this is another good example of where we have to be running permanent education campaigns the way that they run permanent de-education or disinformation campaigns. I mean, it's just the only way. You're lost if you show up 90 days before an election and try to, chase down all the lies and all the people who've bought into them.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's actually why our field program gets out and knocks doors the year before an election. We found people are much more responsive. They're much more open to having a conversation because they don't feel like you're just here to get my vote.
Yeah.
And so we do our best education the year before and the months before the election, whereas in that last 90 days, it's really about get out the vote.
Katie Glenn Daniel is the Director of Legal Affairs for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. Katie, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
And she joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Chicagoland certified financial planning professional Tim Stearns discusses taxes in retirement.
Most people are paying more in taxes and keeping less of their money to live and do what they enjoy. That's why we've put out the retirement tax bill calculator online. You can see with your own eyes just how much you might be overpaying. It's a valuable